All right, guys, welcome back. Today we're going to do Top 10 Beyond the Farthest Precinct, issue number 2 of 5 by Paul DiFilippo and Jerry Ordway. Now, the original Top 10 books was great. One of my favorite books ever. It had so much things in here that is pulled me in, has underlying storylines that became the main storylines, and it goes on and on. It was very it was very interesting. You really want to know more what's happening in the next issue. This spin-off is not so good. The other books has been written by Alan Moore. This by Paul DiFilippo. What's with the sound outside? Jesus. Sorry, I just hear some drilling sounds outside of my window. Anyway, let's try to ignore that. The art is good. It's by Jerry Ordway, that you might know from the Superman comics. And we continue the story, and I'm gonna tell you my grievances. I mean, this is not a bad comic, but it doesn't go anywhere so far as I know. Okay, so Captain Traynor is fired because he says you're not tough enough. Says, I don't know, the Mayor Baboon or something, because this was happening in the last issue, written by Ken Clarkson. Yeah, this comic has a lot of cameos that is basically non-canon. I'm gonna show you a lot. I mean, those cameos is more interesting than the main story, to be honest. Okay, so this apparition is here, and then it disappeared, and Captain says, well, the Spectre was gone in a few seconds, and its appearance has no effect, except for trigger a dozen fender benders to send a few neurosensitive to the emergency rooms with migraines. And he says, but Baboon says, well, that may be true, but it's the public perception that matters, right? And because of your incompetence, it made this mayor look weak and confused. He says, but I didn't do anything differently. Well, that's the problem. He said, you didn't do anything differently than what's always sufficed in the past. But we're not living in the past anymore, Captain. Ever since what happened to New York almost 4 years ago. This country been at war. All right. So he also talks about voters and public opinion, right? And he says, well, I'm giving you till noon to clear out your office. And he said, this is your replacement. Okay, this is Major Sean Cindercott or something. Hero from the Burma Freedom Campaign, a new broom in the 10th precinct. All right. So this is becoming the new captain, right? And like I said, everything you see here is basically what's happening in a comic. She's not in here, by the way, Toy Box. So again, we have Kathy here, and a lot of, like I said, cameo stuff, like these stormtroopers and these guys from Jabba the Hutt, I guess. What's this boat called with 2,000 leagues under, or 20,000 leagues under the sea, right? It's this Iron Giant. There's a lot of that in here. So they are basically looking for disturbance and doing police work, right? And Popeye, Namor, right? So they come in, and again, a lot of stuff before I go into that. So I'm not recognizing this, but probably something important. We have SpongeBob, Creature of the Black Lagoon, Simpsons. Do I miss something? Anyway, so he says, hey, what's the problem? You were called about a disturbance in the river. So he says, I was closing up shop, but then somebody stared at me right outside. And Kathy says, well, there's a lot of Neapolis citizens in here. Maybe there's no crime. He says, well, I'm sure I saw something, and I went outside and cut off a, this Rascal's Whispers, which looks really, really big. So, okay, this is the underlying storyline, right? Instead of the main storyline. Okay, and then we go to Smacks, who is, I don't know, been forced to find an apartment. And I believe this is Kamandi, Last Boy on Earth reference. Maybe Kazar and Shana. And they talk about how they are not real, these are not the real ones, but I believe that's what they are representing. And they're basically complaining about the cops, right? And that they are, so they cannot relate what we've gone through because this whole city is in chaos, right? He says, did you hear about the new residency requirement? You mean all the badges have to live in Neapolis now? All right. I'll doubt we ever see any of them in our building. It's too low rent for the likes of them. All right. Well, that looks cool. And see, this is Zabu. All right. And then this is from that cartoon. He says, I'm coming for the apartment. He says, sorry, buddy, no can do. Well, he says, well, that's the discrimination. Yeah, I'll hold your horses, bud. I ain't no discriminating going on. So he says that the latest one was too small for the squirrel, right? And you are too big. Anyway, and yeah, that's that. I mean, I don't know why this is important. It seems that they are... The problem with this book is that there's a lot of chatter, noise, if you will, about, people talking to each other about random things, which really works in the original series. It doesn't work here. It feels like filler. So Sarge here with this girl, that's all right. And he says, Officer Phantom wants to know whether she can requisition a flight ring from the armory. He says, Sarge says, how come? I didn't think Jackie liked to fly. Well, it's not for her, but for her partner. Yeah, her partner cannot walk. She only can jump. And that's the whole joke, right? And then, I don't know, it feels like a waste of story. So they're going to this place here called hypnotist, illusionist, teleprojectist, hallucinator, geneticist, and ectoplasm, something. And they need to talk to a guy. And they are, like I said, they are talking about random things. And it doesn't really work here because everything is here. This is all an illusion, ghostly. And they ask this guy, he says, hey, this apparition, do you have anything to do with it? He says, no, none of our members did it because it seems to, according to this guy, today's news reveals that the apparition was witnessed by approximately 750,000 souls for a duration of approximately 45 seconds. Creating, projecting, or sustaining such counterfactual image would require the efforts of someone ranking at least 75 of the mesmeric scale. Now, this mumbo-jumbo talk, I don't know what it is, but it seems that nobody can do that, right? And it was basically a dead end. It's a waste of time. And she says, well, at least we got to interview a Hardy. And she says, don't be so sure about that because this was his... Right, it was fake, right? So, yeah. Anyway, so then they go to Buck City. I mean, Dwayne and this Ibis woman. And again, we see a lot of familiar. Herbie, Blue Beetle, right? I know this guy, but I can't remember. Yeah, this Buck here. This guy, I believe this is a DC character, I'm pretty sure. Anyway, but the Ibis woman says, I'm hungry, I could eat a little. And then the same thing happens here, that they talk about random things that doesn't really do anything for the story, right? And he talks about, that this creepy crawlies belong in their own part of town. And a lot of the regular folks sympathize with me. And Ibis woman says, what do you mean? Hellditch was here before Neapolis was built. That's why the feds gave away this land to the science Nazis in the first place. That's the Flatliners district across the canyon. Another bunch of losers. And then we see, is this Mephisto? Steranko effect, like Jim Steranko. I like it when they all throw this stuff in here, but it isn't really important. It's just fun to look at. All right, so they're looking for Miss Inchworm because it seems that she saw something or has information about the apparition. But then Ibis woman says, hey, whatever she knows about yesterday's apparition is probably pretty much out of date right now. And then, oh no, the apparition is back, right? And it holds the earth and it's bleeding and Dwayne is just shooting at it. Of course, it doesn't work, right? And yeah, that was it. This is the only action that you're going to see in this book. And it goes on, and now we go to another place. Oh, to the Death Star. And we do the same thing over again, but then with two other cops, right? Talk about stuff that isn't really important. They need to find some badass called El Tigre, Mexican robot. And this is Tina from DC Comics, I'm pretty sure. Oh, by the way, before I miss something. So, yeah, this is Mantis from Apocalypse. 100%. So, what I say? Yeah, Tina from Magnus and, yeah, that guy from DC. Anyway, and then and she says then Chica Droid, because this guy, I don't know who this guy is, by the way, but he calls us Chica Droid. We need to see El Tigre. One moment. And then he says, well, woman and woman, whether they're silicone or me, they all appreciate it when you comment on their good looks. And she's given the stink eye because probably he didn't say she was looking pretty or something. I don't know. All right, so we have this guy, right? And basically they're interrogating him to a certain degree. He says, you need to tell us off the record what you know about a new cyber drug. Well, you have finally stumbled across dark shots. This is a relative new drug that I do not trade in, not because I object to extreme potency, but only because I have no source for it. And what does it do, he says? Well, each dark shot is nothing less than a small captured quantity of dark energy, concentrated charge of virtual particles that binds the galaxy together. It appears to allow machines' consciousness to access the root controls of the multiverse in some fashion. So, is this just a bunch of mumbo-jumbo, right? So basically it's getting robots high. Is that it, or is it important for later? I do not know. And then we go to, why is it getting so dark in here suddenly? Wait a minute. Here we go. So we go to Rex Corp. Deadpool, Deadshot, Slade Wilson, the Terminator. What's his name? I should have known that. I know this character. I'm a fan of that. I'm coming to that a little bit later. Anyway, Rex Roofer. This guy's from the Green Lantern. Blue Beetle. Wonder Woman villain, right? Yeah. And a couple of other. And this is all a protest. It's all protesting. And like I said, this world is in chaos. And yeah. So this guy comes in and was a partner of Drain in the original series. He hates protests. You can legitimately beat on anyone, but he can spit on you and curse you. Just because you're trying to keep the traffic flowing. Well, he's not wrong. And Electro. I probably missed a couple of them. But then, out of nowhere, some star-like looking women on gliders throwing down jelly beans. And we have Spirit, Iron Man, Vegeta, and this guy is also familiar. Dr. Midnight? Maybe? I don't know. Anyway, I don't know what's going on, but it feels all very random. But I believe the writer wants to show us that this whole city is in chaos or something like that, and stuff is happening. Right? And then we go back to Kathy, who is, getting the answer that this mandible, or whatever it is by Beiju Billy, one for murder and assault, here in the background. Is he a guy that can transform into a fish? I don't know. He says, I'm going to have to consult Captain Traynor for our next move. But then Sarge comes in and he says, hey, did you see the Captain Traynor since he came back from the mayor? And Kevin said, well, there's something wrong. And Smax comes in too and he says, hey, Captain, do you open up? Right? Steve, are you okay? Who's in there? Reveal yourself. And of course, it's this guy. He's talking to the media. And basically, he's, what is it? Trying to go hard on protesting citizens. Reminds me of stuff that's happening now in America. Right? So he says, vacation and days off are canceled. Patrols will check in with headquarters every minute. There's no breaks. And the prosecution of many low-level crimes will be abandoned in favor of rooting out subversive elements. And also, non-essential visitors needs to get out. And overtime will be paid, etc., etc., etc. So there's probably going some kind of a civil war going on then pretty soon. And finally, all officers will be asked to sign and abide by a 10-page loyalty oath as part of the National Allegiance Act. This is your commander signing off. All right, I don't know where this is going, but I'm not really feeling this so far. I mean, it's I don't know. I don't know where this is going, but you know, I like the cameos a little bit more better than what actually the story is. I was more concentrating on, oh, I know this guy. Oh, this is probably the Vulture, you know, from Spider-Man. I think this is more interesting and more fun than paying attention to this particular story. I could be wrong, but I don't have a good feeling about it. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.